Welcome back to another episode of the Done Deal Show. It's Monday morning. Dean Jones is here. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I reckon it's going to be a lively week on the transfer front. So I reckon this is a perfect time to kick it all off.
I absolutely agree with you on that. We've got lots we're talking about today, viewers. So make sure, first of all, you hit the like button. Get ready to leave your comments below as well. But we're talking Jong and Jurrien Timber to Man United. Will they be done deals? There's the Kimpembe to Chelsea links that have now raised their heads. Of course, the PSG centre-back. We're going to talk a little bit of Ousmane Dembele to Chelsea as well, in case people missed that update latter part of last week. We're looking at Christian Eriksen's decision. It looks like he's rejected Brentford, Tottenham, Man United in the race. Could there be another sort of sting in the towel there? We're also going to take a look at Richarlison, Lautaro, Martinez, and a few other deals as well this morning. Any questions you've got, throw them in. If Dean has got answers or he knows stuff about that deal, he'll tell you. If not, he's not a charlatan. He'll say, I don't know nothing about it. It's no journalist knows all transfers. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say. I'll put that out there early on a Monday morning. But I wanted to start with Chelsea if possible, because Chelsea fans are becoming a little, over the weekend, I saw Chelsea fans becoming a little bit restless, a little bit frustrated, a little bit, why is nothing happening? Liverpool have signed Darwin Núñez, City have got Haaland and Alvarez. Why are we dragging our dragging our towels? Dragging our towels? I don't know what it is. Dragging behind.
Dragging our heels.
Dragging our heels. They're dragging our towels.
There you go.
But what's going on at Chelsea? First of all, Kimpembe. This link has now reared its head. There's talk about him wanting clarity about his position at PSG. Chelsea circling. What's the latest there?
Tuchel loves Kimpembe. So, this is one that's probably really interesting for them right now. All the changes going on at PSG, and Poch about to lose his job, and talk about Zidane potentially coming in. If it's not Zidane, then who will it be? And where will the squad stand? And like Skriniar being linked to with a move to PSG. Sven Botman's been linked with a move to PSG. So, you automatically have to look at the players who are playing that position and thinking, well, what's the future of these guys? Like, is one of them going to become available for transfer? And if Kimpembe was to become available for transfer, then I think Chelsea would potentially move for him, because not only does Tuchel rate him, but Tuchel, for this summer at least, has a massive, massive say in who comes through that door. Chelsea's new ownership realise they're not in a position to throw their weight around in terms of transfer targets at the moment. There's one man in charge. That is Thomas Tuchel. Let's give him what he needs right now, and we'll assess things as we go along. We'll assess the guys that he wants through the door. And he likes Kimpembe. So look, he also likes Kalidou Koulibaly, and Koulibaly is going to be available at about 40 million in this window. Now, 40 million for Koulibaly, if you can get him, that's unbelievable. That's unbelievable value. So I don't think that it's all about Kimpembe right now. I think that they're going to get that Koundé deal done, and then they're looking into what other options could come in to bolster up their defensive options, because they definitely need more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think Koulibaly, we actually had a comment that came through from one of the viewers live that says, forget Kimpembe, we need Koulibaly. Well, of course, but Chelsea aren't going to be stupid here. You need to keep a number of options open. It does feel like the Kimpembe deal is something that's, well, if he's made available, we might move for him if other options don't fall into place. But it appears Chelsea have got a list of players. De Ligt's been mentioned. You mentioned there Koulibaly. There's Kimpembe. It looks like they want to add that experience in with Jules Koundé, which we all know is a fairly imminent deal. Let's talk about sort of some differentials again with Sevilla, which isn't surprising. It'd be the third time they've done that. But yeah, I mean, it looks like a good, strong list from Chelsea in terms of replacing Antonio Rudiger.
Can you replace Rudiger? You can't really like for like. That's their big problem. And so you've got to look at what level of players are going in. Well, Koundé, they already wanted him when Rudiger was on board, and they weren't expecting Rudiger to leave a year ago. So Koundé was going to be part of the fabric anyway at Chelsea if it all went their way. So you're now looking for that replacement of quality. I don't think you'll find a player the same as Rudiger, but I think you can find somebody who at least gives you that same level of play. De Ligt has always been the dream for Chelsea. They wanted him before he went to Juve. They couldn't get him. And I think he'll probably still be out of their reach right now. I mean, this is a player that's earning top money, would warrant top transfer fee, and also probably wants to crack on with Juve for now anyway. But Koulibaly, had his head turned by options, probably for the first time. Like, he's been very loyal to Napoli up to now. I think that he'll be interested to see what's out there. There have been some links to Barcelona. I'm not sure they'll be in that situation where they can actually buy him. But if you were Koulibaly, you'd probably want to see that situation out and want to see if that could become feasible, because any player is going to want to be interested in joining Barcelona. But I am told that he does like Chelsea and certainly would be willing to contemplate the idea of moving there. So let's see what happens over the next week or so. Let's see if they can finally get someone with this Koundé deal and get that signed off, because that is becoming quite boring.
It absolutely is the Koundé deal. I mean, I'm done with it.
I hope he's good after all this.
Can you imagine if he isn't? Can you imagine if Phil Jones, the French Phil Jones, turns up? He'll be mad. But I think this is the thing. It's around people being patient. Chelsea are a big club with big pull, but there's, as you say, Koulibaly, the Barcelona link. You know, they are. I know they kind of fizzled out a little bit towards the end of the season, but they showed great signs last year of kind of turning corners, as it were. They could be bringing in Lewandowski as an example. Bernardo Silva's linked to them. They could have a very strong team next year, and that's appealing. And with all due respect, I love this country, but I know that De Jong laughed at this, but the beaches of Barcelona versus the grey streets of London, it's a toss up. It's a toss up in relation to that, and it's going to be interesting to see. And I think people have got to be really patient. I get Liverpool pulled off this deal for Darwin Núñez. Haaland's gone to City, but there's still been very, very little activity done now across Europe right now. It's so early days. Like, I don't know if you're seeing this. You must get this in your mentions. I know you're not massively active on Twitter all the time. Yeah. People just, they're like crackheads looking for their next fix. They're like looking for, give me the transfer news now. It's mad.
Yeah, and this is the thing. You say, like, Chelsea fans becoming irritable. The window opened on Friday. Like, you can't become irritable one day after it opens. Like, I know that a few clubs have got, business planned out before, and like you've seen clubs like Aston Villa even make good deals, like coming into the window. But the window has only just opened. I know that Man United, like at like top level, were like quite annoyed that they've been almost a backlash on their social media channels for the fact that they've so missed out on Darwin. And people are like, what's going on? Why are we being so slow? They're like, the window's just opened. Give us a chance. Like, we're going to do stuff. Wait to see how it plans out. What, 2 months or so are here of transfer activity? It's going to be great fun. Like, there's going to be ups and downs. Like, just ride it and enjoy it. Like, as fans, like, it's not our money. It's not life or death. Like, just enjoy it. Like, you'll get some players. There'll be some good players. You might lose the odd one you don't like along the way. You do like along the way. But ultimately, like, this is the time when you should just embrace it and enjoy the ride.
Absolutely, like have a little bit of fun. But you know what it is, though, Dean? There are some people on socials, their only commodity is negativity. And if they can't be negative, no one listens to them, nobody retweets them, nobody likes their tweets. I don't think they realize, most of them, that people just enjoy watching you show your ass. And it's almost like sort of, I see people go to, oh yeah, say more, and they're like, oh, they up the ante. It's all they've got. Another deal, though, and I'm quoting you here, that's seemingly falling into place. Ousmane Dembele to Chelsea. What's the latest kind of a week on since those big links to him joining?
Yes, I mean, Ousmane Dembele has been one that Chelsea have had on the background for months now, to be honest, because obviously there's been the stalling in negotiations at Barcelona over his future, and it hasn't been very convincing that he would stay there. And Chelsea, and Tuchel particularly, have had a real long-term interest in getting him through the door. Ousmane Dembele is at a really key moment of his career. The age that he's at should be further along now, should have a bigger impact on the global football world. But he's had really, really annoying bad injuries to his hamstring and knees that have really held him back over the last couple of years. But Chelsea are really interested, and Ousmane Dembele is really interested. I did a story on Give Me Sport that went out on Thursday. I just said, look, Chelsea are increasingly likely to win the race to sign Ousmane Dembele. And the thing that's really interesting here is that, as I mentioned before about Tuchel's voice, more important than ever before on transfer targets in this window, well, Dembele is his prime target. He wants to add a new figure to that attack. He wants Dembele. And this board, they really need to show Tuchel right now that he's got their backing, that he is the man and they believe in him. They don't want to lose Tuchel as a boss. Look, Chelsea's season certainly didn't go to plan last season, but Tuchel, from the impact he made after taking over from Frank Lampard, he changed everything about that club, and they're confident that they could have a really good season next year. So they want Tuchel to feel confident in them too. And so this is double-edged. Not only do they get a great player in Dembele, who's got a point to prove, he's still really, really an impressive attacker, and he's going to add a different dynamic to that front line. But this is also about backing Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really important. Look, Chelsea have made some signings that haven't worked out. Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, Romelu Lukaku. They haven't gone to plan quite, right? They haven't made the impact you thought they might have. But it's all about, moving on from your mistakes, and that's what Chelsea plan to do.
It is, and I think what you said about Dembele is so interesting, because when fit, when on fire, when in form, it can compete with absolutely anybody in those sort of inside forward positions. There's no doubt. It is, of course, a risk if he goes there and spends half his time on the medical table. There's going to be anger. But if he comes to England under Tuchel, a manager that likes him, respects him, wants him, it could be a very, very good signing. And there's a number of kind of cheap signings this year, whether they've got 1 year left on their deal, whether they're free transfers, that not just Chelsea, but a number of clubs are looking at. Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, Christian Eriksen, that I know we'll come on to later. There is some real bargains to be done this summer. When teams are all looking at spending 150 to 200 million pounds, these are the kind of signings which just keep that spending down a little bit, add some real star quality. And yeah, the Chelsea links depends on who you listen to. Social media, Chelsea Twitter's at war over this as well at the minute from a fan perspective, because you've got this account called, I think her name is HS or HE Grimes.
All right.
And I'm intrigued by her. She doesn't claim to be a journalist. She's some kind of university professor.
I've come across it. Yeah.
And it's sort of like the Chelsea fans are like split 50-50. Some think she just makes everything up. There are others that are absolute diehard followers of her. And she's kind of claimed that Dembele is going to happen. It's a done deal, waiting for certain things to be kind of finalized. And it's like half the Chelsea fan base went for her when she said this. You're a liar, you're a liar. And then when all these further reports come out from people like yourself, Chelsea fans then grab all your reports and throw them at all the haters. It's going to be interesting. I enjoy watching it, to be fair.
Yeah, totally.
It's only transfers, and it's like no one knows who she is. And I've always said this: if I was someone that worked in an industry where I had certain information, but I didn't want to be a Fabrizio, I'd love to set up an account and just pass out what I know. And do you get what I mean? I'd actually enjoy it. It'd be fun to watch. It'd be fun to watch people like,
especially if you've got to start getting a good hit rate. I mean, look, whether or not she's guessed it, I think she's onto something. I think that Dembele has progressed quite a lot. I think this is quite far down the line, and I think that if the final pieces fall into place, he will become a Chelsea player. And this should be like a moment that you say Chelsea fans are getting agitated and like worried or whatever. Like if they sign Ousmane Dembele, that should be seen as a massive moment. Ousmane Dembele joined Barcelona for nearly £100 million. And that was like 5 years ago. And that was a fee that would have risen. He didn't meet the add-ons, but it would have risen to like nearly £150 million probably. Like such was the potential of this player. He was 20 years old at the time. Barca put a release clause on his head of like almost £400 million or something stupid. I mean, I know they do that in Spain, but this is how good this lad is. And like you watched him at Dortmund, like was ridiculous footballer, absolutely ridiculous footballer. And if he can get close to the levels that we expected him to be hitting at this kind of moment in his career, it should be great. And, Chelsea have obviously got people that have been tracking his condition and his performances. And in the back half of this year, particularly from March onwards, like Ousmane Dembele hasn't had any injury problems and he's been putting it all behind him. So obviously the medical is going to be very important here, but there'll be no stone left unturned. And if that happens, then you just got to hope for the best.
Without a shadow of a doubt. CFC Gem here says, what sort of wages do you think you'd be looking at for Dembele?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, he's obviously going to become one of the highest earners in the squad. But you're also going to be moving some of your top earners out of the squad. Lukaku, for example. Lukaku is very likely to leave Chelsea. Now, the reports are obviously like suggesting this, and part of me thinks that actually it's almost been played down a little bit, the Lukaku stuff. I don't think Lukaku will be there. People that I speak to and have said that there are players at Inter who have been told by Lukaku, "I'll see you next season," basically. Like not in those exact words, but like he's more expectant to be an Inter player next season than he is to be a Chelsea player. Now, it's not necessarily the way he dreamed for this to work out. Romelu Lukaku wanted this to work out at Chelsea. He wants them to change their style of play a little bit to work around him so that he could be a success again in the Premier League. But it's not happening for him, and he can't wait. He cannot wait. He won't. We've seen these comments himself. He doesn't like people speaking on his behalf. He doesn't like any decisions, anything being out of his own hands. And I think he's started to feel that at Chelsea, things are out of his hands now. And that if he's not getting the game time and the style of football that he needs to flourish, then he can't really hang about because his reputation will be tarnished again. And so that's something he's having to take into account. And as such, I think that Inter Milan, we know that the meetings have taken place between Inter and his representatives. Those meetings were positive. Now further talks to be had with Chelsea, but ultimately this is going to come down to a negotiation of like, how do we move Lukaku on and how much of his wage can we move on? And that will all come into the, how much they end up paying Dembele to.
Yeah, of course. And is Dembele a free transfer?
Yeah, he's out of contract.
Yeah. I mean, they always get paid. This is why my whole thing about net spend, it's myth. I get how it's used and I understand how it's used, but this is where it becomes a bit of a myth because he'll show up as 0 on the net spend, but then you'll pay a big signing on fee, big agent fee, and then inflated wages. When you look at the overall cost over 5 years, it may not be as high as signing him for 60, 70 million, but the concept that you're getting him for free is a little bit of a fallacy. But so the wages are generally high. It's a bit like, remember Aaron Ramsey there's no way Aaron Ramsey was going to earn 400 grand a week anywhere else other than if he signed on a free transfer, So
yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So we got the rest of the month basically for Dembele's situation to play out because by June 30, like something needs to have changed. Whether that's his club or his contract situation. So it's a really interesting one. As I say, like this is the week where I think things do become more interesting. Like, especially once the international games are done, like it's very difficult to negotiate anything while players are away. We also have to take into account that like players that are involved in internationals are going to go on holiday. So they're good. They've got a very short window, some of these players, to take a break. So that could also hold things up a little bit, like back end of June. But ultimately, once these internationals are done, this week is seeming to me, from speaking to people, to be quite a key time.
Yeah, I think it will be, and I think with most clubs, it's getting a deal or two over the line, watching the rest of them kind of fall into place because it hurries everybody else along. Because we spoke already about the centre backs. If Chelsea suddenly sign Koulibaly, it changes who Barca are looking at. They might go, well, that's thin the market. We need to act a little bit quicker. It almost needs now some of these deals to start happening to kind of force everybody else's hand. Because right now you can kind of spin 3 or 4 plates, see what's going your way as an example. But Chelsea fans, I want to know what you think. I want to know what you feel in relation to the deals your club are linked to. Any questions you've got, get them in. There is one here that says, Terry, can you ask about the DM situation, as in Declan Rice or Basuma? They tend to be, a lot of Chelsea fans, again, frustration is, what are we doing about the midfield options? Are there any updates in relation? We know how much they want Declan Rice, but has anything progressed in the last 7 days, or is it very much as we were?
I mean, I still would hold some hope over this if I'm totally honest. I think that look, we've seen before like how prolonged talks can go on over a transfer rumor that doesn't come to fruition, and Declan Rice at Chelsea has obviously been spoken about before. If West Ham are going to let Declan Rice go, then they need to, one, get a huge amount of money that works for them, but they also need to replace him. So that's one thing to take into account. But ultimately, Chelsea also really need a place in their squad to open up for Declan Rice to come in. Jorginho or Kante, kind of which one is it going to be? But I do think that Declan Rice can happen. At this stage, I don't think anything has changed in the last week, if I'm totally honest with you. But what I would say is that Chelsea are still very interested in Declan Rice. And I think Jorginho or Kante will leave. And so they will go after a player in that position. And they cannot afford for that player not to be of the very highest standard because they have to compete and keep up with Man City and Liverpool. And look, Man City might well come into that conversation too as soon as they see that they're having talks with Declan Rice. Maybe it's that Man City come in. We know that they went after Pogba. We know that means that they're going to try and sign a midfielder too. So, yeah, keep an eye on Rice. I mean, as I say, there isn't anything like live happening. That he's obviously on international duty. To be honest, he was one of the few England players really that's coming out of this break with credit. But that's the thing with Declan Rice. He never seems to put in bad performances. He always gives you everything. I spoke to the guy that not too long ago that released Declan Rice from Chelsea when he was a kid. I was just chatting to him in a pub. I know someone that's friends with him, and we're just chatting, and he laughed, and he's like, "Oh, let's not go over this again." He said it's one of those things that happens, like when kids, they're teenagers. He said, and at that stage that he was released, nobody really would have batted an eyelid about it. Like Declan Rice was a very, very good footballer, as we've seen hundreds and hundreds of times at that level in an academy. But there was nothing to suggest he was going to become, out of all that group of players, the one that you couldn't afford to let go. He said, and that was kind of reflected in the fact that the moment he did leave, there wasn't a clamour to sign Declan Rice at that age, which there can be sometimes with kids when they're young teenagers. But it didn't happen with Declan Rice. Of course, like Declan Rice bounced back from that moment and used it to kind of push him on. But one thing too that I'm told is like Declan Rice doesn't hold that moment against Chelsea at all. I think he's got an awareness of what level he was at when he left, and like he's very like level-headed about the fact that like it's fine. Like maybe I wasn't in that moment in time at the standard of some other players in that group, but things change and players progress at different times, and he is now undoubtedly one of the most important midfielders in the Premier League. And if you can get hold of him, then you've got an absolute asset.
I think he's a phenomenal footballer that needs that next step up now. No disrespect to West Ham. I'm desperate that he doesn't do a Harry Kane and sign his life away. I don't mean it horribly about those clubs, but they're just they're not, unless they get a City style ownership takeover, they're never going to do what City and Chelsea and Liverpool are doing right now. I just don't see it being on the cards. Maybe no, I don't. I just don't. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. There's no dig. Yeah. But you're the guy that let him go. It's always when you hear those stories, it's sort of he's Dick Rowe moment. If people don't know, the Dick Rowe who famously rejected the Beatles. In fairness to him, about a week or two later, he signed the Rolling Stones. He understood music. He just got that one wrong. And there's gonna be that element. There must be people at clubs that have done it so many times, said no to players. And I think Man United,
of course,
Man United said no to Ligt because we had Phil Jones.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Exactly.
It's amazing what people do.
Fulham released me when I was 14, but that turned out to be quite a good decision from them. Yeah,
wow.
They got Mitrovic now.
They got Mitrovic. They could have had the Dean machine up
They
front.
could have had me.
They could. Viewers, thank you very much so far. Please make sure you're smashing that like button for us. Let's get this past 500 likes while we are live on the air. Facebook currently leading the way as ever. 652 likes from them. YouTube just on 200. So YouTube, let's catch up to Facebook right about now. We are talking Man United a little bit later. Jurrien Timber. We're going to talk De Jong. We're going to have a lot of people asking about Anthony. We'll come on to that later. We've kind of mentioned Spurs a few times already. There's a number of deals, though, that have been circulating around Spurs. The first one, Richarlison, reportedly in advanced talks. Then over the weekend, there was these kind of links from Brazil that Chelsea could come in and try and gate crash the deal. What's the latest with Tottenham? First of all, their move for Richarlison.
Look, Richarlison's been touted around for the past 6 months or so because, the people around him had more than an awareness that it was time for him to move on, basically. And you can understand that. Richarlison's been one of their outstanding performers in his time there. And if you to look at that squad right now, there's only 3 players that any top club would want to sign, and it's Richarlison, Calvert-Lewin, and Pickford. Like they're the sort of 3 standouts, particularly for Premier League clubs. And Tottenham are basically the only ones right now biting on Richarlison, and the only ones that indicated they would probably look to do something if it suited them. At the moment, the terms that are on the table of 50 to 60 million pound doesn't suit them. They fit like this is a player that's gonna work around Harry Kane, be a support forward, be a wide forward, occasionally replace Kane when he's not available. And 50 to 60 million pound isn't really what they were looking to invest right now in that position. So, look, from Everton's point of view, of course, they're setting the bar high. Like, this is a player who's still got a couple of years of his contracts left to go. And they know that there'll be other clubs interested as the transfer window wears on, because other clubs will lose big players and they'll need to replace them. And Richarlison at £50 million will probably end up looking like a half decent deal by the end of the summer. But for Tottenham, right here and now, it probably doesn't feel like a brilliant value that you're getting there. Right now, you see they brought in Perisic on one flank. They're trying to get Djed Spence down on the other side. That's two key cogs of the Conte machine in place for next season. Good competition on those flanks as well for them, so that's all being taken care of. It's this forward position that they've really, really struggled with. This has been an ongoing conversation for like 18 months now about who is the guy that can come in and take Kane's place if it's ever needed, but also who can play in and around him. So I have to wait and see whether Richarlison ends up being that guy. But certainly, like there is an interest there, and it might be that accelerates in the next couple of weeks.
I think what you said there about the price, again, it's not our money, but not Spurs fans' money, but it's about value and what else you might be able to get when you're spending that kind of dough. And Richarlison is just an interesting one. I mean, he does well. Sometimes I watch him in a Everton shirt and I think, oh, what a player. And there are other times I watch him and just think, it's all fur coat and no knickers. There's not much there, and it's one of those players I'm not sold on. However, a lot of people thought that about Jota before he moved. When he moved to Liverpool, it was like, well, he's average, and he goes to Liverpool, and he's been absolutely brilliant. So I think that there's a player in there. It's just whether the one thing you would say is when you've got a manager like Antonio Conte, he gets it right quite a lot when he gets the players he wants. It's like the Ivan Perisic deal. I think if Liverpool were signing him, it'd be like, that's a weird move. But Antonio Conte wants him. You think, well, there'll be a specific position, an area on the pitch that he wants him to take up and for him to kind of dominate and sort of use. The super chat here says, does anyone see the similarities in the face of Richarlison and Nemanja Matic? Someone has some explaining to do. Let's find out where the dads were or whatever. Or the mums. It could be same mum. I don't know. I don't know anything about their families, but there we go. Another name that's been mentioned in North London has been Lautaro Martinez. I've seen Arsenal's name mentioned. I've seen Tottenham's name mentioned. They both looked at him last year to some degree. Depends on the reports. The English kind of press played it down. The Italian press made it sound a lot more advanced. Is that a deal that either of these North London clubs, Liverpool, Tottenham or Arsenal, could explore?
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, like, it's not likely, but I was told it's still possible. Like, it's still possible that Lautaro could move this summer. If it's going to happen, it won't be to Arsenal. It could be Tottenham. That was the information I was given over the weekend. Like, Arsenal, obviously, were banging him from last time along with Tottenham. Arsenal missed out in the Champions League, and that's that done. Like, Lautaro Martinez is a Champions League footballer, and there's not really more to be said than that as far as the people that are close to him that I speak to say. The fact that Tottenham have qualified means that it would give them a better chance if they want to go for him. Brings us really back to the Inter Milan topic. Like, so Lukaku does land at Inter. Is that the knock-on effect that is then needed for Lautaro to leave Inter Milan? It's possible. Like, we've all read a million times about Inter's financial problems and the way that how they're managing to get around any deals they want to do going forward. I don't think there's any urgency from them to get rid of Lautaro. I don't think they particularly want to. But as I've reported quite a few times over the last year or so, like, Lautaro does have a desire to at some point play in the Premier League if the right project is put to him at the right time. And it might be that if Lukaku does return to Inter Milan, that he sees that as a moment for him to move in the other direction and head towards England. So let's see, if Lukaku really is going to Inter, then it becomes more plausible, I think. But maybe it's a domino effect.
Yeah, it's certainly a deal that I agree with you. It's sort of there in the background. I mean, They sort of, when they did the new deal last year, I just felt that was so they could get the most amount of money for him this year. That's all it really felt like to me. It was almost
Right.
like a sort of the Fergie Ronaldo situation. Liverpool did it with Luis Suarez. The new deal happened, but maybe there's a possibility of him moving on in a year or so's time. We had a question here about Tottenham in relation to Spence. Reports late last week that a deal had been agreed between Spurs and Middlesbrough, which caused a lot of people online to be like, "What do you mean Middlesbrough? He's a Forest player." A lot of people like me, I didn't know he was on loan there, to be honest, because I don't watch Championship football. But is that a deal you see Spurs completing?
Yeah, look, Forest are gutted about this in a way because look, they've had a long-standing agreement really with Borough that it would probably take 12 to 14 million pounds to sign Jed Spence. Jed Spence had given indications, what I'm told, towards Forest that like he loved being part of what they'd managed to do last season, really enjoyed it. But and Forest were told like 13 million pound, the deal's on. So they got promoted. Jed Spence was with them. It looked like happy days. But now Tottenham come along. They can pay 20 million pound. They can pay more in wages. And this is a team in the Champions League in an unbelievable stadium managed by Antonio Conte. Certainly not getting relegated next season. And Nottingham Forest have, you stay with them. Like, don't get me wrong. Like what Steve Cooper's managed to do at Forest has been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And they're riding the crest of a wave at the moment. But won't be that much fun probably next season playing for Nottingham Forest because however well you do, you're still going to be in a relegation battle. Don't get me wrong. I think Forest have possibly got enough to stay and win their fight against relegation next season and stay in the Premier League. We'll have to wait and see who they actually sign. But they've got a coach there who's very smart. But yeah, Jed Spence, if he's posed with you can go stay at Nottingham Forest again. You really enjoyed that, or you can go and join Tottenham. Probably going to go to Tottenham. Like, let's give him some. Let's be fair about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think why are you going to turn it down, especially in a team that needs somebody in your position? And yeah, you got to strike while the iron is hot. You do a year in the Prem and your levels drop slightly, or maybe I'm not saying he isn't. Maybe he isn't Prem level. Maybe he comes here and it's almost like over a 38 game season. There's big holes. He's got to strike and go now, though, because you got to earn that money. You got to get the bag. You know what I mean? You got to do what you got to do. And the offer may not come round again. It could go on to brilliant things. He looks so talented to me, though. I saw him play a number of games this year, especially because of their FA Cup run as well. And he just always looked a technically gifted, very efficient footballer, but that could also defend as well. And that kind of, so there's a lot of attack-minded fullbacks who they really lack when it comes to the defending. And he seems to not have that. So that could be a very good signing for Spurs. No doubt about it. We are moving on to Manchester United very soon. I have started a couple of super chats that have come in about the talk on Manchester United. In relation to Arsenal, Dean, any updates there at all? I mean, I know Jurrien Tielemans is still away with Belgium. I know a lot of fans think that's going to happen at some point. Again, Gunners are starting to get a little bit restless. Why are these deals not happening? I think they're worried about people sweeping in. As you mentioned a few weeks back with Darwin Núñez, Man United were close, but there was always that fear that if a big club with Champions League in a good position came in, that he could be taken away. And as if by magic, it happened. Are there fear? I mean, there's been sort of Chelsea linked to Gabriel Jesus and other people maybe swooping in. Real Madrid maybe at some point looking at Jurrien Tielemans. Are Arsenal in a good position? Are they comfortable? Or are those reports over the weekend that Arteta's becoming angry and frustrated? Do you think there's any kind of validity to them?
I think they're still in a good position. I think that the issue you've got as Arsenal or Man United at the moment is because you're not a Champions League club and because, your track record over the past few years isn't great in terms of like one, transfers, but two, also like your finishes in the Premier League or in European football. It means that like players who have got a lot of other options or potentially a lot of other options are just going to wait. And Darwin, through the whole thing, like United were very confident because Liverpool weren't in the frame a couple of weeks ago because they didn't need to be right now. And then the Sadio Mane stuff happened and they had to accelerate. And because they'd had such joy with Luis Diaz, they were like confident it would work out. So quickly, it all moved on and they got it. And that kind of came out of left field for Man United and it got them. But Darwin was always a little hesitant about joining the project because they didn't have Champions League football, but more so, he didn't know who else was joining to help get to the level they need to be at. And that'll be the same case with Tielemans at Arsenal. He knows that other clubs, say Tottenham, have got an interest in him too. And if you opposed, the proposition of joining Tottenham or Arsenal as a player who doesn't have an affiliation to either, you're going to take Tottenham at the moment because it's just better. It's just better. Like you've got a manager with a better track record. You've got a club in the Champions League. You've got Harry Kane up front. You look around you and what you're going to have in that team, and you think, oh, I'll go and play there. It'll be nicer. Arsenal's going to be a bit of graft and a bit of a grind probably because they haven't got the level of player at the moment that Tottenham have. They're very close to it. Don't get me wrong. They've got an unbelievable squad that they're building, especially the youngsters that have come through. And I like what Arsenal are doing, but as a new signing, you wouldn't be wholly convinced. And for Tielemans, he's got to be convinced that this is definitely a step up from where he's been at Leicester for the last few years, because his ultimate feeling was that he's a Champions League footballer. That's why he wants to kick on. I don't think Brendan Rodgers, to be honest with you, is convinced that Tielemans is definitely a Champions League footballer. And I think that he feels that he's getting a lot out of the player and that maybe there's not that much more in the tank. But as a player, you need to go and try and disprove that. You need to go and see at what level you can play at. And Arsenal, obviously, they are a bigger club than Leicester. I'm not going to argue that. And that the potential there is that they get back in the Champions League and then more signings arrive. So I can see that. But Tielemans arriving, you need it to bolster up this squad. Say I was asked earlier on, like, would Xhaka leave Arsenal if Tielemans side? And I'm like, well, no, that would be really silly because what Arsenal need right now is a blend of the old and new. And someone like Xhaka who's come through so much at the club, this is his peak time. Like, he's 29 years old, got a couple of years of his contract left, understands the project that's already underway. I think Xhaka will be a really important figure for Arsenal. I know a lot of fans still won't like him, but he's won some people over for sure. And I think he's an important player to have around that squad. So there's things like that to factor in. And Arsenal will still have a decent transfer window. And they'll sign the 4 or 5 faces that will make sure this squad is better than last season.
Do you know what's interesting? A few things on there. Firstly, the Xhaka thing, you're right. They need to buy players that are going to improve their first team. But it isn't just a case of let's ship out everybody else. You want to try and build a squad that has quality. And if you get a few injuries, you saw what happened last year. And I know a lot of teams exploited it, but they had those injury problems in and around Jan. Xhaka gets sent off. And they were like, we can't go into a North London derby with... Is it Patio? The name of the young lad in the middle, Pateo, something like that. And Patino, that's it. They couldn't go into a game with him and Lokonga as their midfield because it was too weak. Now, adding Tielemans is great, but you don't just remove Xhaka instantly because you're then back to the same position should there be a suspension and an injury where you're very, very light in those areas, although those players are a year older and everything else. So I kind of feel like they need to add and sell something. They've got to create a thicker squad, and fans love this, we like a thin squad, less competition. No, you need competition, and you need to push hard in those areas. But I also think Arsenal, just like Man United fans, have got to wake up and smell the coffee to the reality they're in. Of course, their name, their heritage, their history, and their money can allow them to sign quality players. We've seen it already. But people are going to think twice. People are going to weigh up their options. People are going to delay the decisions because they want to see what else is out there, because our clubs have suffered, in Man United's case, 10 years. And in Arsenal's case, nearly 20 years of failure, regression, and mediocrity. And you can't wipe that away. And it doesn't mean Tielemans won't join. And that's what will happen. Tielemans will join. Everyone who said he was considering not joining, you're in the mud. Well, not really. Otherwise, be there now, wouldn't he? Like he would have pushed for the move to be over the line 2 or 3 weeks ago. But of course, he's keeping the options open. And Arsenal and Man United fans need to realize that's this isn't 2004. This isn't 2013 anymore. There's a new dawn. There's a new age, and I think that's what's happening. And until our teams become regular in Champions League again, until we are actually going into those games against the other members of the top 6 and looking good week in, week out, month in, month out, this is always going to be the case. You listen to what Haaland's words were today. Yes, he supported City, But what he also knows is that they're the best team in the world for him to join. If Man United were still as good as they were under Fergie, that would have been a different conversation, in my opinion. But we're not. So we were never going to get him over the likes of City and Real Madrid. It's impossible with where we are right now. So I think Arsenal fans have just got to realise that and understand that journalists saying that, a comment here, same goes for Man United. I literally mentioned them in the same breath. Maybe you didn't hear it. But we've just got to realize that's where we are. And journalists are not saying Tielemans is considering his options because they're having a dig at Arsenal. They're giving you the reality. And, I'd much rather listen to journalists that are going to give me the reality as opposed to building up false hope. But there we go.
And I think, like, your point there is it's true. Like, Arsenal have to kick on now. Like, I saw Raphina obviously linked to Arsenal, and people were like, that doesn't make any sense. We've got Saka. Like, we don't need anyone in that position. It's like, but it's not about that. And actually, you should really see it as a positive. If say Arsenal were to sign Raphina, they're stacking up quality in such an important position of the field. It can't be that any player in Arsenal's starting 11 is comfortable that they are playing every game that they are fit for. That's not a good spot to get into. And it's not a mentality that I think Arteta is willing to let set in again. He wants them to push for everything they can possibly achieve as individuals and as a team. And that means you fight for your place in the side. And every single week, you have to prove that your levels have not dropped off. And if they have, somebody takes your shirt and you try and win it back. That's the way it used to be at Arsenal. And I think that's what Arteta wants to get back to it being again. He understands what this club stands for. And I think that he's starting to help some of the players in that team understand that whatever they might have got away with a few years ago cannot be tolerated anymore, and it won't be.
You're absolutely spot on. And ironically, Man United and Arsenal, two of the big giants that are failing, their fan bases both push that narrative. Man United were linked to Haaland when everybody still liked Mason Greenwood. And there were a lot of United fans. Why do we need Haaland when we've got Greenwood? Because Haaland's better. And and if Greenwood is better, then Haaland will be ousted by him. Like, this is, you've got to just put two good right attackers, Raphina. If Saka is ever going to be world class consistently, signing Raphina doesn't matter because he'll raise his levels and be better. If he doesn't have the mentality to fight for that position, he isn't as good as you think he is. And that's the same for all players at all clubs. There has to be that level of competition where you might miss out on a first team place. You might drop. I think one of the reasons Rashford's been throwing his toys out of his pram is, I want to be guaranteed. No. Fight for it. If you ain't willing to fight, you are never going to be good enough for our clubs. I think it's a great take, mate. I really, really do. Viewers, keep smashing that like button for us. We're moving on to Manchester United now. Lots being discussed. I mean, there's lots of super chats. The first one that says Simon Stone and Manchester Evening News are putting negative reports out about De Jong. That a lot of people think when Simon Stone's negative about a transfer, it's about to happen. It's just a thing. When Simon Stone kind of says, "Oh, United are unhappy about parts," and it's like, oh, it's happening then. It's kind of a weird thing we had over there. We're going to touch on the Anthony situation as well. The comment here says, what's going on at Man United? So many players have got 1 year left on their contracts. We'll delve into those super chats a bit later. But, of course, Frenkie de Jong and Jurrien Timber, two deals have been sort of 4 or 5 weeks now. They've really been sort of picking up pace. Nothing's got over the line as such. The back end of last week, there's all sorts of talks from terms agreed, imminent arrivals. United are really doing well in these sort of transfers. But what's the latest as far as you're aware about Jurrien Tielemans and Frenkie de Jong to Manchester United?
Yeah, so let's start with Frenkie. And look, this was a transfer that a month ago had slim to no chance because Frenkie just wasn't interested. His full intention was to stay at Barcelona, to win his, keep his spot, win everyone over, and be there like for next season. And you saw him talk publicly over the weekend. He's still saying he doesn't want to leave Barcelona, and I genuinely don't think he wants to leave Barcelona. That doesn't mean that he won't leave Barcelona because he might be left in a situation where he has to realise that there is no future for him at Barcelona right now because they need him moved off the wage structure. As such, as I said on here last week, like Ten Hag 100% wants Frenkie and has got into his head, and Frankie's willing, like if he's going to leave, then Man United is a good club for him to join. I mean, I say that at the moment, there is no one else to join. Nobody else is in for him. So while United have been in for Darwin Núñez and they haven't got him, Well, they had competition from half of Europe, and it turned out a Liverpool that are like as good as they've ever been. So you're not going to win that competition if that's who you're fighting against. But for Frenkie de Jong, no one's come in for him. Man City, I thought might come in. They still haven't come in yet. You look around the rest of Europe, like a Juve coming in for him, no. A Chelsea coming in for him, not at the moment, no. So as it stands, United have got a free run to sign Frenkie de Jong. And let's be honest, Frenkie de Jong is more important to Man United right now than Darwin Núñez would have been right now, because Man United have a hole in the centre of their midfield that needs to be filled and has been needed to be filled for 2-3 years, and they haven't done it. Frenkie de Jong as a number 6 fixes so much about Man United. Forget the fact he hasn't been successful with Barcelona. He hasn't been playing the role that Ten Hag will give him at Man United at Barcelona. He's played more like an 8, if you like, for Barcelona, right? I don't think he'll be that for Man United. He'll be a number 6. And he'll be the guy that sits there and dictates how Man United play. And they are absolutely crying out for that. So, look, de Jong will be got at, if they do pull this off, then they get him at a cheaper price than what Núñez has gone to Liverpool for. And if that's the case, you have to say that for Man United, that is better value, because they need him more. They need him more than they need Darwin right now. Like, they've got an array of forward options that they need to coach and get better output out of, but they've got good forward options. They haven't really got good options in the same position that Frenkie can play. So, look, United want to move forward with this as soon as they can, to go back to your question. And this week, I think, is vital, like with the internationals ending and stuff. Ten Hag and United intend to move on as fast as they possibly can. Obviously, Frenkie needs a break. So, he's been on international duty. He also needs to, reset his brain a little bit, rest his muscles and mind, and kind of also come to terms with the fact that he's probably not going to be a Barcelona player and switch to a new mindset and accept that if it's Man United, this is me now. I'm a Man United player, and spend some time assessing that. But I do think this is a key week for the de Jong situation. And look, from a Barcelona point of view, looks like if they're going to get the sort of money in that they're looking for, he's going to be the second highest transfer fee Barca have ever received for a footballer. That's how good this guy is. Man United aren't just signing a bit part player. This isn't Donny van de Beek coming in and then going out on loan to Everton. This is Frenkie de Jong. This is one of the most coveted central midfielders in world football, who is going to actually be utilised in the position and the role that he should be.
And I think your point there is massive. There's one thing with Barca. I was talking to a Barca fan over the weekend, and he said he feels like Barca made the same mistake with de Jong as they did with Philippe Coutinho. They weren't playing them in their best natural positions. They were trying to fill the void by players that had left. It's almost, let's try and put them into a Xavi or an Iniesta start, like that, get them to do that job. But it's almost a case of that's not where they're at their strongest. They're better in other positions and areas. I almost feel like Cesc Fabregas was never at his best at Barcelona because he wasn't played in the same role that Arsenal played him in, if that made sense. He was just phenomenal in that. He is a brilliant player. And I agree with you massively about the Darwin Núñez being less important. And we saw a report that I shared with you earlier about Man United maybe looking to stop looking at number 9 now this summer because it didn't get Darwin Núñez, and wait until next year. And I see that as being very positive, because Man United in the last 9 years, if they haven't got their number 1 target, have gone on to number 2, 3, 4, can't get 2, can't get number 3. And we ended up just signing people that we didn't really want or need. And Cavani's turned out to be, he had some good games, but not what we needed. Falcao stands out, Di Maria, Alexis Sanchez. There's loads of them where it was almost, we didn't really need that player. The only striker, the one striker we've signed that we really wanted and we got that delivered until his knee injury was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He did the business. We even changed direction when it comes to the summer when we went for Lukaku. We weren't in for him, and then we kind of changed direction, got him. That didn't work. I almost feel like if we can't get who Ten Hag and the club wants now, it's a case of, well, let's focus on other positions. So there's the link to Antony, which over the weekend, again, a number of sort of Dutch journalists have kind of said they see this happening. There was Alex Crooks from TalkSport yesterday, says he believes that they are definite deals that will go through. It's almost a case of, well, if we can't buy a number 9 that we know is good enough, let's focus on improving the midfield. Let's focus on maybe a new inside forward. Let's look at another centre back and improve those areas with our key targets. as opposed to backfilling with players that we don't really want. And I just feel that's what United have got to get out of the habit. And I tweeted earlier saying, if you don't understand why dropping a striker now and wait until next year is a good thing, it's almost like you're ignorant and blind to the problems that Man United have got themselves into in the last 9 years, why we've hemorrhaged billions of pounds on players and salaries that just didn't want to be here, or that we didn't need, or they don't fit our system. Do you get where I'm coming? Like, even like we're linked with some inside forwards here that want to play on the left. It's like we've got Rashford, and we've Martial is going to be back. We've got Rashford, we've got Jadon Sancho, all that dominate that left-hand side. We need someone that wants to play on the right. Not even young Alanga, good lad, says, I really want to be on the left. It's like we don't need anyone else for that area now. Do you get what I mean? At United, we overcompensate in certain areas and underplay others. So the Frenkie de Jong deal, I want it done. I want it over the line, because I'm very excited about what he could bring to our midfield and the balance he could give to us. And yeah, it could be a massive deal. And as you said, this week could be big for it. In terms of the other players mentioned, I think it's pronounced Jurrien Timber. Timber's been linked to us. It was 3 weeks ago, it was on the brink. Then there was this talk of he's kind of considering his own options. Has that changed at all recently?
I think you got to consider, like, what can Ten Hag bring to Man United? And the one thing he can bring to him is a philosophy of football, and he can also bring in players that he's got strong connections with, and players that can move into this United team and help the rest of the team understand what it takes to be successful under his style of football. So, look, don't get me wrong, like, the number of Dutch players linked with Man United since Ten Hag was appointed is absolutely ludicrous. Like, there must have been 27 Dutch players linked to Man United in the past 6 weeks, 2 months. But that doesn't mean that we discount all of them. And, you know, obviously there's Frenkie, and that goes back to Ajax. And then Jurrien Timber coming in at the back as somebody also that isn't like, he's not the finished article. He's not Koulibaly. He's not expecting to play every single minute. He's not coming to necessarily oust Varane and Harry Maguire, but he is an option that pushes those two on. And he's a player that knows how you defend under Ten Hag and how you build play under Ten Hag. And he also would be a guy who would understand what Frenkie de Jong is looking to do in the position in front of you. And there'll be an understanding between those guys that everybody can read off of. Same goes for the right side of attack. And if you were to bring Anthony into that position, you've got somebody there that knows what is needed. And more importantly, probably in that position for Man United right now, Ten Hag knows how to utilise him. He doesn't know how to utilise Rashford and Alanga yet. He doesn't know what to do with those guys or how Rashford can be fixed. For all we know, he might turn him back into a centre forward. Like, he might find that's the best way to rebuild his confidence, just get him back in front of goal and certain fixtures that are easier, and see if he can get his numbers up for next season and start believing he's a goal scorer again. We'll have to wait and see what Ten Hag has in mind for him. But this is all part of the transition now, is that Ten Hag has to draw on the traits he knows can work for him that have worked elsewhere. And if that means that a few players that are from that Ajax mold are part of it, then so be it. That's fine. Not bringing in the whole Ajax team here, but you want certain elements in there that does reflect the personality of the coach. And it might be also the quickest way for the rest of the squad to understand what happens too. Like, Serginho Dest is another player that's been linked regularly with Man United. Like, Aaron Wan-Bissaka moving on potentially. I've heard that Roma could come back in for Wan-Bissaka, and that one could be a goer and could be one that suits all parties. If Aaron Wan-Bissaka does leave Man United, does that mean that there's another hole there? And is that going to be somebody that you would want to have an understanding with Anthony? There's a lot of things in play at the moment for Man United, and they're going to work on it so hard. But if you're a Man United fan, then have hope and have faith, and probably be excited about what's to come. And hope mainly, though, that Frenkie is that first name in, because that changes the philosophy of the transfer market, and it means that other targets are excited to come and join you. If you miss out on Darwin and then you miss out on Frenkie, then the next guy is like, am I your biggest signing, or is there more to come? You don't want Timber being the biggest signing of the summer.
No, I completely agree. And I think what you've also put on there financially is important, because you do need to know who's leaving as well as who's coming in. And we what I think's been really overplayed about Man United this year has been this whole the big clean out by Ten Hag. Like 80% of the players leaving were going to leave if Oli was still the manager. Their deals are running out. The club weren't renewing, or they didn't want to renew. It was going to happen anyway. I think it's a little bit like what you've said. Well, we want to see if we can sell Henderson, sell Aaron Wan-Bissaka, what offers come in for a few other players before we overly commit. Because I said it about Arsenal, you've got to look to increase the quality of your squad. But there is a fine balance between doing that. It's the same my old kickboxing coach used to say to us when we were fighting. It was, don't be careless, but don't be too careful either. And that's what Man United have got to do. You don't want to bloat the squad again and be overpaying and have too many players there and then have disgruntled players in your squad that are not, last year, the likes of Jesse Lingard still being at the club, Dean Henderson still being at the club, it created problems because they were unhappy. So I think we need to also go, right, these deals can happen. We can trigger them. We're in a good position. Let's see if we can get a couple of more people out first. That way we kind of know you start pre-season with that kind of freshness, and a lot of the times it's almost the players will agree that AWB shouldn't play, but they're still friends. I don't want to see him sitting in the stands unhappy and annoyed. And I think those soft facts and soft elements at football clubs are really important to kind of get the blend right.
I agree. Regard. Yeah. And I think, I know that some United fans won't feel that signing all these Dutch players would necessarily get United to the level they need to be at to compete where they used to compete. But there's also got to be some in-between ground here, whereas United needs to get from where they are right now, which isn't great, to that middle ground. And Ajax are probably that middle ground, to be honest. If you get the best players from that kind of model, then you're getting some way to be in there. United, obviously, were looking at this British core before now, and it worked to some degree, don't get me wrong. And their mentality at times and the unity they had at one point under Solskjaer looked like it might work. But it's faded away, and something else needs to happen. That cultural reboot, whatever they called it. There's a new cultural reboot now, and it's called Dutch football, and it might be a good thing. If you're looking at if you were to look at your team next season, and you've got Timber in there as an option, Frenkie de Jong, Van der Beek, Anthony, maybe you throw Dest in there too. That's 5 unbelievable options that are coming into your team to build on where you were. Van der Beek will be a different player from the one we got glimpses of as a United player so far. He can rebuild his confidence, find some sort of connection. I'm not saying him and Frenkie are an actual partnership, but they'll have to combine in some way. And if you've got that core and understanding throughout your team, then it can only help you.
You would think, there's no doubt. CJ Legend here says, what's going on with Man United? Loads of players with 1 year left. Heaton, De Gea, Jones, Fred, Shaw, Rashford and Delo. Look, I would say this. A couple of those guys might get new deals. Some will probably leave for free. Heaton, I wouldn't even worry about. But this is also a trend, isn't it? Players running deals down now seems to be very, very trendy. People don't want to be stuck in long-term deals as much anymore. So I'm not surprised to see this going on. I would also say, if you were to do a poll with Man United fans, barring probably Fred, most fans would vote for all those players to leave anyway. So
I think De Gea if De Gea will stay, he'll get new
contract. De Gea, I hear that one.
Yeah.
Is anything happening with Anthony? We kind of touched on that already. I think it's a deal that United are certainly looking at.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those where you see a lot of excitement and disappointment being built around players at this early stage of the transfer window. And, a lot of people were talking about these players. We haven't seen a lot of them. So it's hard to make a judgment. I watched Ajax probably 4 or 5 times last season. I can't say that I'm an expert on exactly how Anthony adapts to the Premier League. But what I do know is that Ten Hag would have watched probably every Man United game from last season by now and will have seen Anthony. And if he says that he's the guy that can come in and change the dynamic on that right side, then you trust it, because Alanga's still learning. As you say, he's not exactly sure where he wants to play yet. And Rashford is broken and he's not going to be fixed in a week. So, the last Man United, I went to, what was the games I go to? Man United Spurs. And I was watching Rashford when he came on, and he's so frightened to go at people. And he's coming back on himself. He starts to go at people and he's like, no, I'll just go backwards and I'll just give it to the centre midfielder. That's not what you want. You need somebody who's going to, Old Trafford, it's all about, especially wingers. It's been such a big part of Man United's history, is that the wide players are the guys. It gets out wide and you hear that noise of people's seats hitting the back. Like everyone suddenly stands up because they know something's going to happen. Ryan Giggs, like every time he got the ball out wide, like you could hear that noise in the back of your head if you've ever been to Old Trafford. Like the whole crowd is suddenly on their feet because they're expecting him to have a couple of touches, get past his fullback and then make something happen. And that is what United are looking for. And that's what you as a United fan will want to see at the start of next season. You'll want to have someone on that right side who gives you that option.
No, listen, I totally agree. And a lot of people have spoke about Rashford as being like his body's broke, he's physical. For me, it's all mental.
It's all mental. Of course
his head's
it
down,
is.
his shoulders are hunched. And again, I'd love for the preseason to go, well, because if Rashford gets back to his best, whether people rate his ability or not, that's 20 plus goals a season we're getting, because that's what he's done 2 years running. So you can get that, and that kind of counteracts the need of spending 100 mil on the wrong centre forward now that we've missed out on a number one target because Liverpool got him. So,
and on top of that, 2 years ago, Man United were looking at this squad and how it was shaping up. And in attack, you had Rashford and Greenwood, who were looking like, they were going to be the answer to any problems. Like as a duo, what would their worth be? 150, 200 million pound, maybe, like as a projected figure of where we were at right now. And like now one of those figures is gone. Like the Greenwood's not there as an option now. And like, people don't really talk about him now because of his situation, but like from a football standing and from a planning standing, that's quite a significant player to suddenly just be gone from your squad.
Yeah.
And not replaced. So I know that we're talking there about the report of United not bringing in a new number 9. I'm not convinced they won't bring in a number 9 at all, because unless they're bringing in a youngster from within or turning Rashford into a backup 9 or something, then I think they either go for a young emerging forward or they go down that same tried and tested path that they've been down with Cavani and Falcao and Ibrahimovic and get someone who, I know Ronaldo's already like 37, 38 years old, but another guy who's 35 years old who can do a job for you, even if it's for a year or two.
Yeah, if it was a loan deal for someone, if Barcelona go bankrupt and Lewandowski's available, do you know what I mean? Maybe, yeah. I mean, that was kind of touted around by the Sun this weekend, and I read it, and there was nothing in it. It was a fluff piece. It was almost an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's very unlikely, isn't it? But
yeah, but it's something like that. If there was a striker available, a good return that you could get for a year or so. Yeah, it would. In this instance, could definitely do a kind of job in relation to that. Of course, we saw Liverpool over the weekend sign Darwin Núñez. A super chat here says, with Darwin Núñez done and Calvin Ramsey to be confirmed, is Liverpool transfer incoming done? Of course, they signed your boy, young Fabio, as well. Do you think Liverpool will look to do any more business this summer, or do you think that those 3 signings will be about it?
I mean, when James Milner signed a new contract, it did make me wonder whether they will now sign another midfielder, because they've probably got enough to get through for now. I mean, they've got an array of options, and we know what their first choice 3 is in the middle. They've already got a backup 3 to replace them as it stands right now. And I think they'll be quite confident in that. The amount of outlay they've just put on Darwin Núñez makes me wonder what level of investment they could even put in there. We know, yes, they were looking at Tielemans and players like that. That was before this deal came along, which could end up being €100 million deal, this Darwin Núñez transfer. I know it's not right now, but if it eventually gets to that level, that's a huge amount of money. And Liverpool are typically quite cagey about it. This is going to be a record transfer fee for Liverpool. So with that in mind, do I expect heavy investment in midfield? Probably not. But in the January window, maybe. Let's consider the fact that this is a very strange season. Liverpool can be confident that between August and December that they've got options that can 100% see them through. But that World Cup begins in say when the Premier League campaign pauses in mid-November, and then we get back underway on Boxing Day. Loads can happen in that amount of time with these players at a World Cup and stuff. And it might be that January transfer market, which actually Liverpool are pretty good at, is the time when they look to add one more figure to that midfield. So that's something that I personally am keeping an eye on at the moment.
Yeah, I kind of feel a little bit like Liverpool they've responded to the Haaland deal. They've responded to Haaland with getting Darwin Núñez. Is Darwin Núñez as good? So far, no, but it's the Prem. You never quite know who's going to do what when they move to the Prem, who fits what system. So they've made that action. I still think they might need, again, that midfield option. A lot of Liverpool fans want more in midfield. There are options out there. I mean, we had a Liverpool fan phone in yesterday and said he spoke to someone he knows who works for the club and has confirmed that they will go for Jude Bellingham, which... Listen, yeah, your face there was the same as mine. I'm like, I don't think they will, but it's almost that
kind
of...
him. You won't get him right now. It's like I honestly think it's a waste of time. He ain't going to move right now unless you can get a deal where say like, you come next year, you pay now and get him later. That might work with Bellingham, but I don't think you're going to get him right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, look, they did look at Tielemans, so they obviously are looking at kind of midfield options. But the thing with Liverpool is, and I would say this to their fans, I just spoke about it with Man United. If your number one target was Tielemans and Bellingham's number two, and he ain't available this summer, Liverpool will wait. If Liverpool just wait, if that's the case, just
they waited for Keita, right? Like they did with Naby Keita. They waited for him, and like, look, if Bellingham was ever going to leave Dortmund, like even if he says he's not leaving, he suddenly changes his mind, then Liverpool's probably, to be fair, the club that convinces him to do that, and you could totally understand a change in his thinking if that were to happen. If Liverpool get Bellingham, then the club's chasing the top two might as well give up for the next season or so, because those two are just striving to just compete with each other till the rest of the time by the looks of things. But there'll be other clubs that want to do that too. As I say, but Bellingham to Liverpool would kill off a lot of competition in this league.
Oh yeah, he's a star.
He's so good, man. He's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's about playing. Like sometimes as a United fan, I look at this stuff. I look at Liverpool and City, and it's like I am jealous, but we just got to focus on ourselves because they're just
cyclical, right? As well, like he'll come back around.
Yeah, at some point. I might be old.
I don't know when it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't know when that'll be. It'll come back around at some point. But Liverpool will wait. A guy says, well, Liverpool are washed. The treble ain't for everyone. Listen, I get the banter. I think the deal is done, and we will be loaning him back to Dortmund until next season.
Nice. But look, it's not totally unthinkable. It's like the same with Christopher Nkunku. Like, keeps getting linked with Premier League clubs from RB Leipzig, and I was told on this one this exactly the same actually. Like, Nkunku won't come to the Premier League this season, but if somebody wants to strike a deal whereby they can have him in a year, that might be more plausible and something we're open to. So, this is German clubs are very smart and savvy, and they plan better than us. They get better value for their players often. We've seen it countless times now, the amount that these players are going for, and now Portuguese clubs are getting on the act too with Darwin and raising his price at a key time when there's a bit of a battle for him. And fair play to him, because the Premier League is where all the money is, and as soon as someone starts sniffing around your players, you might as well hike the price up by 20 million, because they'll probably end up caving and paying it anyway.
Yes, exactly. And I've always said that's how the European clubs get their cut of the TV deal money that we have. You very rarely see that the European clubs charge each other the same amount of money for players. If it's an Mbappe, yes, it's that level. But I can imagine if Darwin Núñez had joined Bayern Munich, I could imagine it being about 50, 60 million euros.
Mate, last season, he was linked with Brighton for less than 50 million, Darwin Núñez.
Yeah. I'm at 25 or at 25 million.
He was... Brighton were genuinely in for him, and it didn't look like that strange a transfer. And now suddenly we're talking about 100 million euros, and he's gone to Liverpool. Well, that is unreal.
If you look at do you remember the story I read, and I heard this is true? You remember when the Venkies first took over Blackburn?
Yeah,
they almost signed Robert Lewandowski as a young player.
They did, yeah.
What stopped it was he couldn't get to the UK for because of the volcano ash, and Blackburn went in a different direction and signed some bum. Right? I don't know who they bought.
Who it was.
They some bum. They might have loaned Biram Diouf from Man United instead. Look how that turned out. They could have. Again, you just don't. I mean, that's the crazy thing. There's always those stories that come out. I mean, Arsenal have been bantered so many times because they almost signed Yaya, they almost signed Zlatan, they almost signed Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah. I always love
the thing is they actually did almost sign all those players though. To be fair to Wenger, especially Mbappe, he was so close to getting Mbappe. He thought he had him in the bag, and then he decided not to do it. But there are a lot like that just, you get negotiations, but it's just life, isn't it? We all want things, we try and get them, we can't get everything we want.
Yeah, people mentioned Luis Suarez here. I remember 2 summers running before he joined Liverpool, Man United, in for him, and we never did it. And they went Liverpool. And honestly, like in the end, now with the things that he's done, I'm kind of glad he wasn't a Man United player. But from a footballing sense, watching what he was doing, it was like, how have we missed out on this guy?
Well, he might be back next season, mate. Aston Villa are looking at him at the moment. So.
Villa are looking at a few. Dean, absolute pleasure as always to speak, my friend. Viewers, thank you very much for hitting the like and the share button across all platforms. Top 6 show tonight, 6 p.m. The 6 at 6. So make sure you're tuning in. The link for that's already available. So go set your reminders. Brilliant panel on tonight. Fans reviewing the transfers. We're going to have a bit of a debate about Darwin Núñez and Haaland as well. But until next time, people, take care. Goodbye. God bless.